A pleasant good morning to everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. Yours truly, Carlos Brown. Here's what's coming up on the guest menu for September the 9th, 2023. Of course, Charles Edmond, co host, joins us along with the following: Charles Bishop of the Prairie View A&M Television Network. He joins us again. He's going to be talking about the Jackson State and Southern University football game. A huge matchup coming up at 6 p.m. at A.W. Mumford Stadium in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We'll also talk with him about Prairie View A&M versus Abilene Christian in their big ball game this evening. Jim Kleinpeter of The Advocate. He covers Southern University Athletic. He joins us in hour number one. Also, back, our regular guest, Coach Vann Pettaway and AD Willa Brown. Here's simply what's trending on the Carlos Brown Show. It gets no bigger. It's officially called the Pete Richardson Classic, although many people call it the Boombox Classic because of the two great bands. But the Pete Richardson Classic, the 2023 edition, Southern University and Jackson State, they get it on tonight. Also, the Jaguars open the 2023 football season on a somber note, very disappointing note. They dropped a 14-10 decision to Alabama State. We'll look at that. That's what's trending on the Carlos Brown Show. We'll introduce Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. Charles, can you hear me? Good morning.
Good morning. We're here in Shreveport. I can hear you loud and clear.
Well, welcome once again to the Carlos Brown Show. And we'll start off this show, of course, talking about the Pete Richardson Classic, Southern and Jackson State. Now, you have to get accustomed this year of playing Jackson State early on in the season. The home opener also for Southern University. Both teams are coming off of disappointing losses. Jackson State losing to FAMU. FAMU finally gets it done in a dominating fashion, although some will say it was a tale of two halves. But the first half, very dominant for FAMU. For Southern University, quite simply, took the opening drive that they got the football, went down the field with ease, 7-0. Then they give up a big play on defense. Then they come back and kick a field goal, and you're up 10 points, scored, didn't get anything else after that. So very disappointing. So, but it doesn't take away from the magnitude of this game. Now, we talked before the show. No, this game doesn't count in the conference standings. Alabama State game didn't count in the conference standings. But guess what, Charles Edmond? This game matters because it is a huge rivalry. And if this team doesn't get it done, they go out, they start the season 0-2. Yeah, SWAC championship goals are still in play here, but it won't sit well with the Jaguar Nation. So a must win. I've heard that cliche. They got to get it done. A hard sellout at A.W. Mumford Stadium. 30,000 perhaps inside the stadium, another 100,000 outside the stadium. It is going to be huge, and you don't need any motivation by both sides. To me, this is the most intense rivalry on Southern University's schedule. I understand the Bayou Classic. I understand Grambling State. I understand Alcorn. You got to win the week, 1 week at a time. But as far as intensity and passion, this is it, Charles. And if they don't get it done today, somebody that you're looking at is going to be in a nasty mood for at least 2 or 3 weeks. And that's me.
Yeah, I think regardless, whoever loses this game, someone's going to be in a nasty mood. Of course, for you, if the Jaguars lose, it was, I had Southern to win the game last week. And I thought the offense kind of improved at the end of last season. And I thought the Jaguars would put some points on the board. And I was just looking at the game, looking at the stats in the third quarter. no yards, 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles lost. I mean, 5 takeaways by Alabama State. I mean, you're just not going to win football games like that. Yes, it was a great start, but you fizzled. And so it was disappointing. You give Alabama State their props, but we talked about it leading into the season. The continuity at the quarterback position. Blood got the start. He will start today, according to Eric Dooley. He said he's sticking with him. And I know there's some conversation there. But it is disappointing as far as just what didn't happen offensively. You got to give Southern's defense their props. They hung tough. But offensively, you got to get more out of it than what they got out of it. And now, the question is for this week, you're playing your number one rival. And it's really, to me, you talked about the Boombox Classic. It's the get off the mat classic for me. Which team's going to get off the mat? Both teams were knocked down. Both teams were knocked to the canvas. Which team's going to get up this week, get off the mat? And, for Southern, you start out 0-2, and we talked about it. It doesn't count in the standings. And I understand, hey, you want to win the week and all of that. And your goals are still intact. But you got to figure out a way to get it going. And you're at home. There's a lot of pressure. Can Southern win a big home early season game? Can they do that? And I think we'll find out today at 6 o'clock.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sure if I'm wrong, people will tell me. Under Coach Dooley year 2, I don't think they've lost a home game. Now, on the road's been a different story. And let's say if Southern doesn't win this game tonight, heaven forbid, then in the 2-year period, year and a half, 7-7 overall. So one of the things we want to look to offensively, this offense under Coach Dooley has been very erratic to me. Offensively, you were promised an explosive offense. And so we've looked at, within now going into game 14, we really haven't seen that consistent explosive offense. Tonight would be a good time to get it going, to be honest with you. Running the football, I thought last week you got to be committed to doing a better job running the football. That takes some of the pressure off. Yes, Harold Blood missed some open receivers. I saw them. You just got to get a better performance. And what happens is the defense played pretty good. But if the offense is 3 and out, not consistent, then the defense gets tired. They're on the field a lot. And you know what? You kind of saw that throughout the conference. And, boy, what a bad outing for the conference. Those teams that played up, I understand. But across the board, not a lot of happy campers. But that was last week. This week, you got to get it started. What is the old cliche? The most improvement is from game 1 to game 2. That happens most of the time. We'll see. We'll have some specific breakdowns of what Southern must do, keys to victory. Also with Southern University, again, we talked about it, hard sellout. The atmosphere is going to be great. You've got 30,000 in that stadium. You can't disappoint them. And that's the way I look at it. It's also a lot of recruits are going to be at the game across the board. It's going to be huge. You can't beat this atmosphere, tailgating, all of the good stuff that's going on. Everything is ripe for an outstanding football game. And hopefully you're going to get a outstanding football. Coach T.C. Taylor coming into Baton Rouge, but no stranger bringing his team. Again, they were dominated for most of that game last week against FAMU. They're not going to be in a good mood.
Yeah.
The rivalry speaks for itself. Yeah. Rattlers ready to dominate the SWAC at another level, striking from the top. That's a FAMU grab there. Hey, toot your horn. You can do it. You finally got over the hump against Jackson State. But Jones's Alabama State team, we talked about what Southern didn't do. Let me just say this, and I should have said this at the top of the show. Congratulations to Alabama State. Defensively, a very nasty team. They got it done. They made adjustments, And one of my keys to victory for Southern is you're going to have to be able to make in-game adjustments. Alabama State, after that first drive, they got it done. They got after Southern. And you're going to have to counter those adjustments. But congratulations to Alabama State. Offensively, Davis looked like an All-American for some parts of that game. But the strength of Alabama State defense is still the defense. And congratulations to them. They got it done.
3 words as far as Alabama State is concerned. They're coming. I think it started last year with the MEAC SWAC, and they just slowly have built the thing, slowly but surely, quietly. Eddie Robinson Jr. is doing a nice job there. They won at Texas Southern last year, a game in which they trailed and rallied and won. They're coming. And I think last week is another proof they're coming. So I congratulate them. Their defense is really good, kind of a reflection of Eddie Robinson Jr., who was a defensive guy at Bama State. So that defense is nasty. They can bend, but don't break. Southern jumped out early, and you saw what happened from there. Even though for the Jaguars, a lot of self-inflicted wounds in that game last week. So don't sleep on Alabama State. And because of the fact that a lot of people aren't talking about them right now, with every win, people will talk about them even more. So this was a big win for them. We'll see what happens going forward. But congratulations to Alabama State. And you're right, Carlos, about the rest of the games in the league. Of course, we lost to USM. It was tough. It was tough offensively. Defensively, we played with a lot of heart and pride. The talk on social media about us scoring, USM scoring 70 points, that didn't happen. I thought our pride and our effort and grit kept that from happening. And so, it was tough, but we played hard. But some very disappointing games in the league, as you talked about. Texas Southern blew a 17-point lead. And I know Charles Bishop will talk about that, but that was, I had Texas Southern winning the game, and I was very confident that they were going to pull away in that game. And we talked about Andrew Body, which body will show up. 3 interceptions, 350 total yards of offense. That's wonderful. But 3 interceptions. And we talked about it last week. And a lot of people are on him. Is he the guy to get it done? I think he is. There's been a lot of attacks on him to the point where his mother's even gotten involved. His mother's on Twitter following everything that's being said about her son. And but a very, very, very debilitating loss for Texas Southern. And what makes it worse is that they've got 2 non-conference games on the road this week, in the next 2 weeks. Toledo today, and they play at Rice. Coming off a brutal loss. And Texas Southern only has 1 rival. Let's just be honest. I mean, Southern and TSU is a good rivalry, but the rivalry game for Texas Southern is Prairie View. You lost that game. And so how do you bounce back from that after blowing a 17-point lead? You got to win the week. You got to mentally refocus. And I know it's going to be tough for Coach McKinney making that tough trip up to Toledo. But, that was a disappointing loss. Obviously, Grambling losing it late. And so, we look at some tough losses around the league, and you're right. Some teams just kind of had it right there and just couldn't quite get it done. And obviously some disappointing losses as well. So I totally agree with you that it was some brutal times in the SWAC in week 1, but you got a lot of football in front of you.
I'll just say this, and then we have to get to a timeout. That's right. Game Time Live will be streaming from ASU right after the show. Stay tuned. Some of the teams look the same in the beginning of the season, the way they looked at the end of last season. And you really didn't see a big improvement. You talk about Texas Southern. My question was defensively. Can they get it done? In Body, we trust. Do we have pieces around them? Prairie View, no one's really talking about them as much. 37 points, Texas Southern. So some of the same question marks I had at the end of last season, I still have them across the board for most of the teams. So week 2, we'll see if I'm going to see that improvement that I was expecting to see at the end of last season. Some teams are struggling offensively. Wow. Charles, Macon, no passing yards in the first half. 0, none. Not good. Blood, missed some open receivers. 50% passing. Got to be better than that. You got to challenge everybody to get better offensively. On that note, we'll take a timeout. When we come back, first guest of today's show, Charles Bishop, joins us to give us that special look of Jackson State. He's a JSU alum, and the historicalness of the rivalry between Southern and Jackson State. It gets Charles, they just darn right don't like each other. It's a healthy dislike between the two fan bases. So we have to just, call it the way it is. But it is one of the most intense rivalries in college football. He joins us next. You're watching the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network.
It's never too early to plant the seed, to share the tradition, and instill a sense of pride in your HBCU with your little ones. HBCU Pride and Joy Children's Boutique helps you share your school spirit with a wide selection of adorable kids apparel and accessories officially licensed from your favorite HBCU. Visit hbcupridejoy.com and follow us on all social media at HBCU Pride Joy on Facebook and Twitter.
This is Brian Fulford. A.D. Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
I'm returning to Clinton Paris, and Tampa's my community. I grew up here, went to school here, and my wife and I make our home here. What makes Tampa special are its people. So when I represent someone injured in my community, it's personal. Call my office and speak to a real lawyer and not some referral service. I will fight the insurance companies to get the settlement that you deserve. At the law office of Clinton Paris, we take the pain out of being heard.
Since 2002, Empowerment Resources, Inc., a nonprofit organization, has empowered more than 1,500 youth and adults in Duval and surrounding counties through its programs Journey into Womanhood, Girls Mentoring, Life Skills for Teens, and Parenting Education Coaching. To get involved with programs, volunteer, or donate, visit www.empowermentresourcesinc.org. Follow us on social media, facebook.com/empowerment.resources and instagram.com/empowermentjax.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only mobile cigar lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
As you can see, welcome back to the Coles Brown Show. Boy, last year, I believe that was game one last year. On my birthday, Southern and Jackson State. You can kind of see the intensity there coming in on the sideline. Oh boy, it is always a special time. A special time. First guest of today's show, Charles Bishop. Charles, someone says, and I think it was a family guy in the EA. Please ask Brother Bishop about it. Ain't no fun when the Rattler got the gun. Oh, wow.
Hey, they've been waiting for 2 years to say that. So to the victim of spoils.
Shots fired. Shots
Yes,
fired. Yeah.
indeed.
Wow. Between FAMU, Jackson State, Southern, Alcorn, the fans always have a great time. Bishop, welcome back to the Coles Brown Show. Glad to have you. This rivalry, Southern and Jackson State, it is intense. You can use a lot of adjectives. I know you wish you could be in Baton Rouge, but you'll come later in the season when Prairie visits. Talk about this rivalry between two HBCUs in the state capitals of their respective state. The fan bases are alike, great bands, just great atmospheres. What does it mean to you as a JSU alum?
I mean, this rivalry, man, it's everything. And I had to literally think about it this morning. This is literally the first time in 28 years that I have not been at the Jackson State Southern game. So obviously I'm enjoying broadcasting with Prairie View, but yeah, it's a rivalry unlike any other. Like you said, two fan bases that they mirror each other so much, but they don't care for each other. Like first cousins, they're competitive first cousins with regards to everything. So it is just a fun rivalry from all throughout the athletic department to the bands. Even when I was on the Honda Campus All-Star Challenge Bowl team, we wanted to be Southern. So it extends throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, and my best friend sent me a text message. He was out early this morning. He was in Baker, a suburb of Baton Rouge, and he saw a guy with a Jackson State shirt on. And so they shook hands nicely. That's very good. And he said it pumped him up for today's game. And those, I mean, all these different little side stories. We could talk about the first time that I ever attended a Southern Jackson State game in Jackson. It's just tremendous. It really is.
Well, Carlos, I say thankfully the statute of limitations has passed on my freshman hijinks on whatever I might have done in Baton Rouge. So that tells you how big a rivalry it is.
Right. Tremendous rivalry. Both teams coming off of disappointing losses. And I won't say which loss is the most disappointing because to each fan base it's disappointing. I don't think it makes the rivalry or the intensity of this upcoming game any less that both teams are coming off of losses because it is what it is. It will be an intense, and for somebody, it's a chance to get a win, and for whoever loses the ball game, wow, they're on a 2-game losing streak early on in the season.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, you got to get the win in this game right here. This will be huge because I believe Jackson State has an FBS opponent coming up, and Southern the road doesn't get any easier. But I tell you what, both fan bases were humbled a little bit last week, especially when you take a look at Jackson State losing the Orange Blossom Classic, team that they've handled for the past couple of seasons, and humbled FAMU last year, but. This year, the roles were reversed. You take your hats off to Coach Willie Simmons because you take a look at that game, especially last week with regards to Jackson State. They whooped Jackson State up front. Offensive line and defensive line really punched them in the mouth from the word go. And it was FAMU's day.
Yeah. And me and Charles was talking earlier, and Charles brought up the point that, for Southern, the first 2 games are, not conference games. They count overall in the standings. But I say, Charles, good luck. The Jaguar Nation, they hear that, they see that. Well, guess what? They're not in a good mood.
Yeah.
after that loss. So this game, it's still very, very important, Charles. Yeah, they lose, they 0-2. It's not a conference game, but boy, it sets a nasty mood going forward.
Yeah, but it does send a nasty taste in your mouth going forward. And you almost have to remind fan bases that, we're 2 games in. It's not the end of the world, but yeah, it's a lot riding on this game for definitely Southern's fan base, Jackson State's fan base as well, because their fan bases are just so aggressive, especially when you take a look at them from a social media aspect. They really go after each other and go after everybody in the conference. So not only is it just huge for both teams, but the psyche of the fan bases, they got to get this W today.
Charles Edmond, if you could talk to the Jaguar Nation, and since you are, try to convince them that, hey, this game is important. It counts overall, but it doesn't count in the standing. But good luck on that one. I think they're still going to be in a nasty mood unless it's a W at 9:30 tonight.
I do understand the passion. I do understand the energy. I do understand the synergy. But what is the overall goal?
Yeah.
The overall goal of the Jaguar Nation, Carlos, you've been crying and you were at the Celebration Bowl. Man, I wish my team was here.
Sure
The goals, no matter what happens tonight. And I understand we're in the moment. And as fandom, as fans, we live in the moment. And in the moment right now, it's Southern and Jackson State. But this is just me, and I might be the only one on the planet that feels this way. I give credit to Roman Banks for putting this schedule together. Bama State and Southern, you're getting the best from Bama State's one of the top 3 teams in the league. Jackson State, top 2 teams in the league. They're giving you your best shot, and you're getting to see exactly where you stand or where you don't stand early, so you can make the corrections and adjustments as you go forward in the games that do count. Because if you take advantage of this, get exposed right now, and it doesn't count on paper, and you run the table, you're going to be congratulated. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to say, Roman Banks, you did a heck of a job with this schedule, because you got a chance to see where your team was early on against 2 good conference teams. You make your adjustments. Now, whether Dooley does that, I don't know. But clearly, when you have that type of schedule, I wish Alcorn had that type of schedule, which we played Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman early on. Game doesn't count. And you get to see where we are. And then you run the table in the West. I would love to have that kind of schedule. I mean, it's not happening, but I think for the Jaguar Nation, yes, this was unexpected. Yes, you started fast last week, but you can't have 5 turnovers. You can't have the miscues that you had last week. The question of whether Blood's your quarterback, just like Tyler Macon, you talked about it. 0 passing yards. He had the 75-yard run, which was electric last week. Tyler Macon will start today. Fred McNair confirmed to me the other day he will start. He didn't do anything to lose that spot, even though Aaron Allen, the backup, did well. So, yeah, teams got to get it going. Southern's got to get it going. Jackson State got hit in the mouth. And I said this, Charles Bishop, this is the get up off the canvas game. Which team's going to get up off the canvas? Is it going to be Jackson State? Is it going to be Southern? The pressure's still on Dooley, Carlos. T.C. Taylor, yeah, this is first year. Yes. Good win against South Carolina State. Bad loss last week. How do you respond? But the question for Dooley is, can he get his team to the next level? And we'll see. Playing at home, we'll see. All I'm saying is that this game could help you in terms of seeing where you are and you win. It propels you. But if you keep making these mistakes in games like this at home, what's going to happen when you go to Alcorn, you go to Pine Bluff? We'll see. But I'm just saying this is a big game for Southern in terms of just trying to see where you are. But I'm looking at the bright side for Southern. It don't hurt you on paper. I would love to. I think every team in the league would love to have that. I mean, just in my opinion, I might be wrong, but I think every team would love to have the schedule that Southern had. Question is, you're going to take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's like an NFL 2 preseason games. That is what it amounts to. So,
but you know, I understand it, but I really don't, and I wish every game would count as a conference. And I understand those 2 teams rolled off the schedule, so why not play them? but I just hope it's not a every year situation. But it counts. But it counts overall. And the mindset is this: you got to win the week, and that's what they have to do. You know, I don't know if I wish everybody had that type of schedule, but let's just be honest. When someone rolls off a Southern schedule, what happens? Teams would want to play, especially when Southern travels to the respective stadiums. You know, the Jaguar Nation travels very well, among other teams in the conference. So, yeah, it's a good problem to have. But in the grand scheme of things, I wish these games counted in the conference, but they don't. So we must move on. They've got to win today. And I still say, if you go down 0-2, your goals are still ahead of you. That is all the politically correct things to say and nice. And it is true. But if you 0-2, start off the season, then the margin of error is like this. Look, there's no space in there. Yeah, you got to win out. And then everyone is kind of doubting this football team. So it's huge. It really is. It's a huge game. Now, with Jackson State, Charles, coming into this ball game, Jason Brown, someone in the chat room just asked, what's the health status of Jason Brown playing today?
Yeah, I think Jason Brown is a starter until otherwise, but you want to see him get off the mat, like Charles mentioned, this week, because they got after him pretty good last week in terms of that FAMU defensive line. But, what I want to see from Jackson State's offense this week is, can they get back to that up-tempo offense that we saw against South Carolina State? That was kind of surprising that they did not go up-tempo against FAMU last week. And just rhythmically, they were just kind of out of sync offensively. So that's going to be a huge thing that I'm looking for tonight with regards to Jackson State. And then offensive line. They have two really good running backs in Irv Mulligan and JD Martin. But can those guys, can they get off tonight? Because I think that helps everything with regards to Jackson State's passing game. Can they up and run the ball against a stout Southern defensive line?
And you know, it's interesting, Charles Bishop and Charles Edmond. I wanted to say Charles and Charles with Southern University. Same thing. I think it's one of my keys. They got to establish the run, and if it's not successful early on, still commit to getting the carries. But you've got to establish the run, because if you got to sit back and become one-dimensional throwing the football, then I think it's easier for the defense to kind of just sit back in the ears and come after Harold Blood. So some things never change. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to run the football, and you got to be balanced on offense. And with Jackson State, especially a young man who transferred in from Walford, pretty good. And I agree with you. You're going to have to get after Jason Brown, because I don't think no quarterback is comfortable when they're running for their lives or to get a lot of pressure put on them. So that's going to be interesting as well. Defensively, second half, Jackson State performed much better overall against FAMU. Defensively for Jackson State, what do you think they're going to try to execute on Southern University just to make them one-dimensional?
First and foremost, and you touched on it, making them one-dimensional. You got to be able to stop the run. I think that was a huge thing last week with regards to Alabama State. The stat that jumped out for me, Southern only 68 yards rushing. And they have great running backs, especially when you take a look at Gary Qualls in the backfield with Kobe Dillon. So that is going to be huge, I think, for Jackson State in terms of, like you said, trying to make Southern one-dimensional and coming after the quarterback. The thing that jumped out for me last week with regards to Jackson State's defense, they just never got to Jeremy Musa. He was comfortable back there. Only one sack last week. Of course, you know, the hallmark of Jackson State defense the past 2 years is they did make you one-dimensional. They stopped the run, and they got after the quarterback, and it made life a lot more manageable on the defensive side of the ball. So can they get after – can they stop a very good Southern ground game and then start pinning their ears back, come after Harold Blood? That's something that I'm keeping in the back of my head. And Special teams last week, it was woeful. There's no other way to say it. Can they get up off the mat with regards to not just kick off returns? Jabari Sharif really had a field day against Jackson State last week.
It's going to be interesting because you look at both teams, and one of the things I said offensive for Southern University, this offense to the Jaguar Nation was promised an explosive offense, consistently each and every week. Right now, they haven't done that. Could be for multiple reasons. Last week, the opening drive, they went to the tight end. You didn't see a lot of back outs as far as involved in the offense. And so, Joseph said Doolin makes himself one-dimensional. It's time now to really step up offensively and see if this offense can be explosive. You got a lot of weapons, so you got to utilize them. And if this doesn't happen this week, then it's going to be even more pressure, as the person in the chat room talked about. And you kind of hear that, can you make adjustments? Are you too one-dimensional? Balance on offense is the best advertisement for this offense and to execute and get it done, Charles Edmond.
Yeah, that's why when people talk about Alcorn, my team, how we always have been able to run the football. And the thing is, we stick with the run, even when it's not working. It wasn't working last week, with the exception of the one big run that Tyler Macon had, but we still stayed with it. And of course, we fell behind. So how committed are you? If you have a good running game, how committed are you just to stay with it, even though it might not be working at the time? Because it does make you one-dimensional, but you still have to run the football. You still got to keep the defense honest. How patient are you to stay with it? And I think that's the key for a number of teams across the league, because you do see teams get pass happy a lot. And of course, when you're doing that, you set yourself up. So you got to be able to run the football at least to keep the defense honest. I think, and Carlos, you always, promoted the running back room for Southern University, and they've got a bunch of really good backs. The question is, will they be utilized more so to keep that Jackson State defense from being as aggressive? Because if they're pass happy, Jackson State's gonna come after you. But I want to ask Charles Bishop. I watched the game last week, and it just seemed, was Florida A&M just that good, or was Jackson State overall just out of rhythm, out of sorts? I didn't see the same synergy, the same energy from Jackson State, the fire and brimstone that I saw in Atlanta. So I don't know. I mean, you kind of know how those dynamics work with your team. Was it just more FAMU, or just Jackson State just didn't bring it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think T.C. Taylor touched on the fact that he didn't, that team was not as up. And for whatever reason, maybe you buy into the headlines a little bit, and that's unfortunate because Jackson State for the past 2 years has definitely had a target on their back, but it kind of goes into, you just can't roll out the theme, and that's the end of it. Can't just guard the yard. That's that. No, FAMU came out and punched them in the mouth from the jump. So, you have to come with it first quarter throughout. I think they stabilized things in the second half. I think the defense did a much better job, but it was almost as though, we're here, we got the Jackson State brand, that's that. And FAMU was not hearing any of that. I think they definitely had a bigger chip on their shoulder, and they set the tone on Marcus Bailey, 96 yards from the jump.
Yeah. In the previous year, 59-3. And we were talking about, if not this year, when? And so I agree with you. FAMU had the bigger chip on their shoulder, and I also agree. It could be two things at once. And in this case, FAMU won it. I think Jackson State came out and, hey, they were confident, but FAMU took it to them, and they got it done. Bishop, if Jackson State wins a ball game tonight, it will be because of what?
They played fast. They played controlled defense. I think that was one of the things that was touched on a couple times this past week by T.C. Taylor. But for me, if that running game gets off, it opens up so much for Jackson State. And you really kind of saw that in the first week against South Carolina State. It really opened up things downfield for a guy like Rico Powers who can fly. For a guy like Isaiah Spencer, I should say, who can fly downfield. You get a chance to see that team lead. Guys like J.D. Martin and Irv Mulligan are pounding you in between the tackles. So that would be huge for me to see if they can do that. But if they get the running game up and going, I think that just means the world for this Jackson State offense.
Have to do this quickly. Prairie View hosting Abilene Christian, a big victory, overcoming a 17-point deficit last week. Where does Prairie View sit mentally now, playing out of conference, which we desperately need to win for a conference at home against Abilene Christian?
Plays into the theme that Coach Bubba McDowell has been talking about all camp, finish the game. And this was a team that was down 34-17 late in that ball game. And somehow, some way, they made the plays in the fourth quarter to send it in overtime and win the ball game. But psychologically, they believe now. They believe that they're conditioned. And that's one of the things that Coach McDowell touched on. He thought they were the fresher team going down the stretch. And he said, putting guys through the paces of this triple-digit degree camp, that really paid off with regards to the Prairie View team last week. And once they settled down, they started making plays. And you take a look at both teams, they really match up very well. Both veteran offensive lines, big offensive lines, both teams like to run the ball. And Coach McDowell said it's going to come down to some one-on-one matchups because both teams at times they're going to have to slide safeties down because you're trying to get that extra man in the box to try to protect against the run who can win their man-to-man matchups down deep and get some big plays over the top.
Well, I'll have my prediction. Thanks for that information later in the show. And we have some guest predictors. And I didn't do too bad last week. Didn't get them all. But, hey, in the 75 to 80% percentile. So I'll take that. No, can't beat that. Bishop, appreciate you once again. Have a great broadcast tonight. And pulling for Prairie View. Got to win these non-conference matchups. Oh, they're desperately needed. Take care. All righty. We're overdue. 11:44 for our next guest. We're going to take a timeout when we come back. Jim Kleinpeter. He's got his keys to victory for Southern University. But we'll talk about Southern and Alabama State last week, the mindset coming into this week with Jackson State. Up next, Jim Kleinpeter of The Advocate. You're watching the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network.
Itchy, squirmy, scratchy, family not getting clean? Get Charmin Ultra Strong. Go get 'em. It just cleans better. With a diamond weave texture, your family can use less while still getting clean.
Goodbye, itchy squirm.
Hello, clean bottom.
We all go. Why not enjoy the go with Charmin?
At Hampton Law, our primary goal is to provide non-traditional yet effective solutions and redefine the approach to client legal concerns. As your trusted legal advisor, we believe in sophisticated, personalized services that eliminate the confusion and complexity sometimes associated with legal matters. Our high standard for client care and concern, coupled with our extensive legal knowledge and skills, make Hampton Law a resource focused on the protection of the client's interest and overall goals. We value our clients and truly enjoy working with them. Visit thamptonlaw.com to conveniently schedule an appointment online. Tamika Hampton Esquire, 1631 Rock Springs Road, Suite 336, Apopka, Florida, 407-494-1471. thamptonlaw.com.
Nope. Nope.
Come on, him?
Ooh, I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up message quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
From novice to aficionado, find yourself here. High quality cigars plus personal customer service. Slow Burn is Waco's only Mobile Cigar Lounge, featuring a meticulous, curated collection of premium cigars. Visit our website, www.slowburnwaco.com. That's www.slowburnwaco.com.
Stride K-12 powered schools are ready to put over 20 years of being a leader in online education to work for you. Dive into curriculum designed for the online classroom. Team up with state-certified teachers trained in virtual instruction. Take control of your child's education journey. Discover the power of personalized learning with a leader experienced in preparing kids for a future they can be excited about. Take charge. Stride K-12. Enroll now for the fall.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. Before we get to our next guest, that'll be Jim Kleinpeter. 166 yards passing. That's net for Southern. 69 yards rushing. Total offense, 62 plays, 235 yards. Alabama State, 266 yards. Net yards rushing, 86 for Alabama State. Net yards passing for Alabama State, 180. So defensively, you take those numbers that Southern gave up. They really played well, minus a few hiccups, but got to improve offensively, and it could start Saturday. Introducing now Jim Kleinpeter. He covers Southern University athletics for the Advocate. Jim, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, guys. Good to see y'all.
Good to see you. And I know you're getting to campus early because Jackson State, say no more. It's going to be a very festive atmosphere. But if we can, Jim, your thoughts and perspective on last week's ball game, the loss to Alabama State 14-10.
It was one of those games. Southern was in it right till the end because they were only one play from taking the lead. The defense had a few problems in the first half, mainly just getting off the field because they only allowed 7 points. And I can't argue too much about that, but they couldn't get. They gave up a couple of really long drives, and I think Southern's offense only had the ball 3 times, and they scored twice. Disappointing. We haven't seen this Eric Dooley offense. We're waiting, and we really didn't see it except maybe on a couple of occasions last year. And it just did not come together last year. And you've got a new quarterback, so you got to. I guess I think he's going to be more comfortable this time in his own stadium. That's Harold Blood I'm talking about. So yeah. maybe a little bit better overall offensive effort this week.
That's a valid point, Jim. Valid point. The explosive offense, we haven't seen it. I jotted down some notes and I could just call it what we found out or what I found out. And let's see. Everyone can agree or disagree. It's that type of show. Southern must improve offensively, be consistent, and finish. Defense can be special, must improve getting off the field on third down. And Southern must be able to commit to run the football and have some success. And the Jaguars must finish ball games, 60 minutes. Anything's way off base with that, Jim? You agree or disagree with some of that?
Those are pretty basic good because their running backs last week averaged 2.7 yards a carry, and it's just no good. I mean, if you took out Blood's rushing yardage, you don't have much of a run game. And I'm thinking maybe we overestimated the offensive line. They got some players that started last year, but really they didn't play as much as you might think. 4 guys that started at times. Some of those guys maybe started 4 games and didn't play that all that as much as it looks like they might have. So maybe that's just something that takes some time to come together. Playing with a first-time starting quarterback. So all those things, the first game, you make a lot of your mistakes. And you usually, coaches like to say this, you make the most improvement from the first to the second game. Well, Southern's offense has a lot of room to improve.
Yeah, a lot of room. And as I stated earlier, also give credit to Alabama State. Defensively, I heard and seen last year that they were strong. It seems like they've even improved more. So you got to give credit to Alabama State. But then also 2 things can be true at the same time. Southern has a lot of room for improvement, particularly on the offensive line, quarterback, and you got the pieces in place. Now it's just a matter of getting it done. Now, Jim, with the Jackson State team coming off of a loss, Southern coming off a loss, I don't think it takes away from the significance of this game. One of the things we've been talking about, well, it doesn't count in the conference. Southern goals are still ahead of them. I understand that. But, boy, I don't know. To me, this game is still important. It's really important to showcase improvement and getting things done.
Absolutely, because Southern starts conference play the following week. You better have your flaws. You better have an understanding, at least an understanding of them, and some control over what you're going to do about them. And if Southern's got to score more than twice in a game, it's just 10 points. You're just not going to win in too many games. You got to score 24 or more, and even that's not always enough in a SWAC game. So yeah, and I don't want to blame everything on Harold Blood. I think there were some things he did pretty well, and I think he can still be the quarterback that helps that they need. He's got to get some help, and he's got to his wide receivers have got to help him. I know there was one throw that he made that he double pumped. He just hesitated just long enough when he threw the ball, it got batted down. It would have been a touchdown if he just throws the ball on first instinct. And that comes with playing experience, because you don't want to make a mistake. But he had his man open, hesitated just a fraction, and the defensive back was able to run over and knock it down. Those are the kind of things you hope you see him eliminate.
And then if you go back, Charles, the first drive, you saw them go to the tight end a couple of times. They did a good job of getting the ball to playmakers. And then it seems like, hey, it went away after that. But again, that you have to give Alabama State some credit. They made some adjustments. But with that being said, hopefully, guys, this offense will get some help. So as you stated, it won't just be all on Harold Blood, but utilize every weapon that you have, because I think you're going to need it against a very tough Jackson State defense.
Are you talking to me or Charles?
Either one.
Yeah. I mean, I think clearly for me, just settling the quarterback down a little bit is definitely the key. Your running game is a quarterback's best friend. We struggled with that against USM last week. And so I think, when you have a starter in Tyler Macon or Harold Blood, whatever the case, you got to get settled in. And it just took a little longer for us. Even though Southern got off to a really good start, you got to stay committed to what you do in running the football. And even though, as Jim, as you mentioned, he had some receivers there. I have a question, though, in terms of, there's questions about the situation there with Blood starting. And Dooley said he's going to start again this week. What are your thoughts about that? Is it too early to just scrap things, even though, as you mentioned, conference starts for real next week? The games count on paper next week. What are your thoughts about the whole QB situation there? In terms, some people feel like Blood's not the answer, but it's too early to scrap the thing, and to me, to make anything, make any significant changes at that position.
No, I mean, in fact, I said, he played. He didn't play all that badly. He had the turnovers. He did great on the first two drives. He had them moving. And there's not any reason to panic, and I don't think they're going to make a change even if they lose tonight. You got to stay with him. They've invested so many of their preseason camp snaps into him, and unless he's just throwing interceptions and fumbling and he looked poised. He had the poise. It seems like he has a grasp of the offense. He threw to the right places sometimes. That's his first start, and you got to give him a pass on his first starts. Like I said, some of these things will eventually, he'll stop making these tiny little, like I said about the recognition mistakes, where if he just throws the ball on instinct, and everything will come to him on instinct, and that's what you want him doing. Then the rhythm of the plays are not upset. I thought he made some outstanding throws in the first and in the second half, but you got to come back and do that every play, or you got to do it at least once every 3 downs so you can move the chains. And they just didn't move the chains after the first 2 drives. 100 yards in most of the last 3 quarters is just not enough offense. And they hurt themselves with the penalties too. Two holding penalties. The only 2 holding penalties in the game just completely stalled 2 of their drives. And yet they're still right there with 40 seconds left in the game. They get the ball back, and you run your 2-minute drill, and maybe you can win pull it out. They were right there till the end. So you can't say I don't think they quit on either side of the ball. They just made too many mistakes. But you can't keep saying we got to correct our mistakes every week, because pretty soon it's week 6. All right. And why are you making these mistakes? So yeah, I mean, they better show that they've cleaned up. And really, I mean, they were a heavily penalized team last year. They only had 6, but boy, 3 of them were just really, really
crucial times.
Yeah, it just took them right out on offense. So yeah, I mean, let's see some improvement on the mistakes. Let's see some offense, because we haven't seen that.
We're visiting with Jim Kleinpeter. He covers Southern University athletics for the Advocate. Jim, your keys to victory for Southern University, I got a chance to look at them earlier, but for our audience here, Southern wins the ball game. What do they need to do?
Well, I'm going to, it's easy, to come up with everybody needs to run the ball. Yeah, I get that. Both teams are going to want to do that. I think Southern needs to get their fans excited, and I think you're going to see that tonight. This game will have them excited. They're going to have some LED lights that are supposed to go off tonight. It's going to create a little more, intensity maybe with the fans. And that does a lot for a football team. You feel that. The players talk about it all the time. They get vibes. They get actual vibes from that. And they need to take advantage of that, because you're not going to get an atmosphere like that every week. And if you want to get back, this is a good setting for Southern to get back. And, Jackson State's coming into a snake pit. And if you remember 2 years ago, the last time Jackson State was here, they barely escaped. And that was a lot better Jackson State team than Southern's going to be facing tonight. So Southern's capable of winning this game. I picked against them. Because I just haven't seen them. I just don't know that, I don't have a lot of confidence in their offense that they're ready yet.
And, we talked about it. This is a perfect time for them to get it right, to start that engine. Because if you look at it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, under Coach Dooley, they're undefeated at home, I believe. But on the road, they've struggled.
Yeah.
And so this will say if Southern loses tonight, I think they'll be 7-7 in 14 games under Coach Dooley. And so you said it. The atmosphere is there. The crowd is there. They're clamoring for the offense to explode and be consistent. This is the time to get it done. And so hopefully it'll happen. You won't have an electric atmosphere at home the rest of the year like this game. Homecoming is homecoming, I understand. But here is an opportunity to win and get the fans engaged and set it up for the rest of the season. Not a conference game. I understand that, but it is important. And try to convince someone if it doesn't go right tonight. You can say it, well, their goals are still ahead of them, but it just kind of takes something off of it. And then you'll have doubts with this team.
Yeah, no matter how much this isn't a conference game, it feels like a conference game, and it's not an excuse for not playing well enough to win. You know, you can't say, well, we weren't motivated, because I'm sorry, that won't fly. You know, and just don't say it, but take advantage of this opportunity. Take advantage of, and I think people put a lot of heat on quarterbacks. But quarterbacks have so much of the offensive responsibility on them. They touch the ball every play. Everything they do affects the play. If they just mishandle the snap a little bit, it can throw things off. If they don't do their fundamentals, you know, maybe the pass comes in a little high and it's intercepted. Well, you know, those guys have got a lot of pressure. It takes a lot of mental toughness. You've got to be able to move on from the mistakes. And I really think when you're making your first start, you're going to make that's the most mistakes you should make in any game. And that was a good defense he was going against, a good defensive coach. Knew how to handle Southern. You notice what they did. They didn't try to do anything too fancy. They tried to hold on to the ball, and that's what they did in the first half. And Southern got the quick 10 and then just didn't get anything else because Alabama State controlled the tempo, and Southern made enough mistakes to where it couldn't get its offense unfurled.
Their best offense was their defense, Alabama State. And it's equivalent to a basketball game. You know, you got an up-tempo team that wants to play up-tempo. We'll make them do something they don't like to do, play half court.
That's a good metaphor. That's a perfect comparison. Absolutely.
And it worked. So congratulations once again to Alabama State. Jim, appreciate the time. Get on campus a little early.
Today. Oh, I learned my lesson.
That traffic's probably backed up right now at 12 o'clock. I guarantee that traffic's probably already pretty thick right now.
It's probably backed up all I-55 all the way to the Mississippi state line.
Yeah, and hopefully everyone will have a great time tailgating. It'll be 30,000 in the stadium, another 100,000 perhaps outside the stadium. So enjoy yourself. Jim, appreciate the time. We'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you guys. Good being with y'all. Thanks for having me.
All right, thank you. That was Jim Klein-Peter, covers Southern University athletics for the African. Huge matchup tonight. Huge matchup. It's important. Yeah. It is important for several reasons. And Charles, I think the next person that comes up to me and says, well, it's not a conference game, I'm going to do like they did in the old French days. I'm going to take off a pair of gloves and I'm going to slap their face. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. It is important. It is the rivalry. It's Jackson State. Do I need to give the pregame speech? No. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And I guess the word is disappointing to start the 2023 football season. Gain the confidence back. Get it done. Utilize your weapons. Yeah. Harold Blood doesn't have to win the game by himself. You have too many doggone weapons, and I don't want to see holding. I want to see a disciplined team out there, and I want them to have fun as well. Yeah, we know it's pressure. It's a lot of pressure, but you're at home. Guard your stadium and guard it well.
There are heated rivalries and there are friendly rivalries. Jackson State and Southern is a heated rivalry. There's no question about it. No doubt. And so I think both teams have points to prove. TC Taylor wants to prove that his team can bounce back from that disappointment down in Miami. And for Southern University, they're at home. It's going to be 30,000. And congratulations to Jaguar Nation and fans, by the way, for selling out your stadium. You don't hear SWAC games being a hard sellout too often. I mean, let's just, across the league, you don't have that. And so for Southern and their fans and everyone involved to pack the place, I think that is awesome. And if we can all do that for all of our games, that's just my diatribe with that as far as fans. I think that will be wonderful. So I'm glad to hear a hard sellout for a SWAC game because you don't get it too often. You just don't. And I'm glad that's the case, and I hope that continues throughout the league.
JSU fans, welcome. Not the first time for some for the first time. Also, Baton Rouge is going to be congested. Grambling State and LSU tonight. But guess what? I'm just going to be brutally honest. It was a hard sellout for Southern and LSU last year. I don't think you have that type of sellout this week. But it's historic for Grambling State. They're playing. You want to say something, Charles?
Yeah, they did announce, I think LSU announced early in the week that the game is sold out. That's what they put out there on social media. It is a sellout. But a couple weeks ago, it wasn't. It got to a point, I don't know if you saw it, that people could buy tickets for $15 because they were trying to sell it out. And I don't know if they sold a bunch of $15 tickets. I'm sure that they did. But LSU did announce that the game is a sellout. So they put it on social media.
I'm gonna have to look that up. Sellout versus a hard sellout.
Oh yeah. What is the difference? I was going to ask you about that. What is the difference between a sellout and a hard sellout? Help me with that.
Well, I think my colleague Dr. Cavill explained it in our group text message. With the inventory, standing room only, all of that's gone. Of course, you have. From a fire marshal's perspective, you could only sell so much, but the inventory is completely sold out. Now, whether they get to the game or not, that's different. But tell you what, A.D. Brown will be able to tell us an exact definition of that. But I question that. LSU and Grambling are sellout, but is it a hard sellout? I don't think it is.
I read sellout. I didn't see hard sellout. I just saw the big caption, LSU Grambling sold out. That's kind of how I took it.
I guess I'm not being objective, or I can't be objective when I'm dealing with Grambling State University. But anyway, on that note, we'll take a timeout. You're watching the Carlos Brown Show on the Black College Sports Network. Willa Brown, Coach Vann Pettaway up next.
Supermarket sushi, really?
No. Wait, Troy, you work here?
I'm never not working. Like Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology, up to 100% dandruff protection, even between washes.
Never not working, huh?
Oh, Troy, you're such a good teacher.
Yeah, I know. Never not working. Never not working. Never, ever not working.
Are you serious?
Never not working. Dandruff protection that's never not working. Head & Shoulders Scalp Shield technology.
The human voice has always connected audiences with experiences. Major brands all across America have trusted Kever's voice time and time again. Conversational, powerhouse, intelligent, and sincere. That's the voice you need for your creative marketing process. KeaversVoice.com. Kever's Voice, Kever's Voice, KeversVoice.com. Always on, all the time.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app. As we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
At Hampton Law, our primary goal is to provide non-traditional yet effective solutions and redefine the approach to client legal concerns. As your trusted legal advisor, we believe in sophisticated, personalized services that eliminate the confusion and complexity sometimes associated with legal matters. Our high standard for client care and concern, coupled with our extensive legal knowledge and skills, make Hampton Law a resource focused on the protection of the client's interest and overall goals. We value our clients and truly enjoy working with them. Visit thamptonlaw.com to conveniently schedule an appointment online. Tamika Hampton Esquire, 1631 Rock Springs Road, Suite 336, Apopka, Florida, 407-494-1471. thamptonlaw.com.
Majesty is a premium health and wellness tea line focused on bringing delicious yet healthy tea blends to the community. Filled with an abundance of vitamins and antioxidants, we work to blend teas with exotic spices and fruits to produce scrumptious and wholesome beverages. So check us out at mymajesties.com. That's MyMajesties.com. My Majesties, an Urban Passport member.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. Boy, I feel good. Willa Brown, AD Willa Brown back. Coach Vann Pettaway is back. Charles Edmond is here. Good afternoon, gentlemen. And Will, the definition of a hard sellout, I think I butchered that one, but like a point guard, if I can't get it done, I can get the true definition. Tell us a true definition of a hard sellout.
And Carlos, I don't know if there is a quote unquote true definition of a hard sellout. Yeah, I mean, in my world, a sellout is a sellout. If you've sold every ticket, every space that's available, that sort of thing. If you want to call that a hard sellout, I guess you can. But the bottom line is a sellout is a sellout. So if you have nothing else left to sell, whether it be standing room only, whether it be tickets, whether it be seats, that sort of thing, to me, that's as hard a sellout as you can get. I mean, are we talking about time frame here? Is it 2 days before the event happens and it's sold out? We call that a hard sellout, or something to that effect. I mean, I guess you could talk to probably 4 or 5 different people and maybe get 4 or 5 different versions of it. But to me, Carlos, in my mind, it's a phrase somebody made up in terms of, trying to sensationalize one thing over another. A hard sellout versus a regular sellout or what have you. My game is better because it was a hard sellout. Your game is not as good because it didn't sell out 3 days beforehand or what have you. So that's just my thought on it.
Interesting. Well, let me be arrogant as a Southern alum. I'm good at that. It was a sellout quicker with LSU and Southern last year than Grambling State and LSU this year. So I'm being very arrogant right now. It's historic for Grambling State. Talk to people who were there last year, said it was the equivalent of a Alabama LSU football game. You couldn't maneuver. If you didn't get to a certain spot, you couldn't move. Some people were on campus at 8 o'clock and still didn't make it to the game.
Wow.
So I'll just leave it
Well,
at that.
bottom line, Carlos, LSU were the ones who laughed all the way to the bank at the end of the day.
Right.
I mean, they utilized us to help fill out their stadium, and they could probably say, that most of their games are a sellout anyway, whether it's a hard sellout or otherwise. But I mean, great marketing on their part, what have you. I mean, they gave us a few dollars to, come in and play them, that sort of thing. But bottom line was the winners at the end of the day, was LSU.
Right. Well, but I also think that the other thing that is good for our schools, they want that band there, and their fans are coming. A lot of their fans are coming out to see those bands. They enjoy what's happening with the HBCU bands, and you can hear the flavor of HBCU bands all across the SEC. And I think that's a testament to the work that our band directors and our bands do. And I think that's part of the package when they bring us in. Their fans want to hear they want to see the bands.
And guess what? Southern got a total of 750,000. It was reported. Grambling State got the same deal. So we shall see.
But should that have been a $1 million game? I mean, I know you're just coming down the street, so you're not traveling far, and all of the little nuances that kind of go with that sort of thing. But realistically speaking, ideally, you're talking about one of the top teams in the country, and LSU, would have really hurt them to make that guarantee $1 million. Especially,
I would have taken it.
Especially considering the fact that the band was coming also. And, I'm sure that the ADs had to kind of split some of that cash with the band. So, it wasn't a $750 for the athletic departments at those institutions. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate with that. I mean, granted, like I said, you're just going down the street, so your expenses are minimal, that sort of thing. So I'm sure that probably had a lot to do with the final tick. But upwards of 900,000, 950, somewhere in that range, to me would have been a more acceptable type of figure.
I would say that it's about willing and able. I think every school in the SEC is able to pay $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
But are they willing to pay $1 million to a FCS school? Probably not. And I agree with you. I do think that should be the case. Because the team we played last week, guys, USM, they're playing at Florida State today. I guarantee you USM's getting over $1 million to go down there. I guarantee you that. They have the money to do that. So, yeah, it's a question of whether they're willing to do that and whether our schools back away and say, we want $1 million. And I think if that happens and they say we're not willing to pay that, then, they'll move on. And the question is, are we going to settle for 750 or 700? Several years ago when LSU played Georgia, Carlos, I think that was the Gales game. I think they got 700,000 for playing Georgia. That was several years ago. The value of that now is probably close to $1 million if you value it in today's times. So I do think, like Wheeler Brown said, I do think $1 million should be the standard for these type of games now. But I don't think it'll happen. I don't think LSU will play an FCS school $1 million. Maybe 800,000, maybe 9, maybe. But I don't see $1 million. That's just my own personal opinion. They can afford it, but will they do it?
Well, we'll go back in time a little bit. Like Nickel State comes on the schedule next year. McNeese, they didn't get 700,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, somebody. So I agree with Wheeler. Yeah, you're in a capitalistic society. If I can get $1 million, darn right, I'm gonna try to get $1 million. But the question is, Wheeler, 50,000 to the Southern Foundation, 700,000. Expenses are probably very low. Would you have taken that $750,000 if you were the AD at Southern University, or are you
Yes,
willing?
I would take it.
Okay.
There's no doubt
Okay.
about that. I'm not going to turn my collar down on that one. No doubt.
You had me worried there,
No
Willa,
doubt
for a
about
second.
that. No doubt about that. So, I mean, that goes without saying. But, knowing that I'm going to have to share some of that money with the band, however much that may be, I'm going to try to kind of get that north of, I'm going to say at least 850, 875, somewhere in that range. Knowing that I'm going to have to give the band at least maybe a couple 100,000 or what have you. I want to, part of me want to be selfish and bring back as much as I can for my department. And, so I want to try to look at it from that point of view, either that or just have the band director kind of make his own deal with LSU to, see what they can get individual of the football contract.
Well, with that being said, interesting discussion in the chat room. Edwin says band money was separate with Southern University, but we all agree $750,000 total is a good deal, and it's better than other FCS schools that in the state of Louisiana that they got when they played LSU. And then we'll be looking next year. Nickel State is on their schedule at LSU. We'll see what happens with that. Wheeler, Vann, Coach Vann Pettaway, Jackson State, and Southern University. We've talked about the fan bases are just alike. Arrogant, cocky. They like to take over opposing fields. What does this game mean to you guys? Although they don't count in a conference, they count overall. But the magnitude of this football game, Wheeler, I'm sure you know. When you were director of athletics,
you gotta have some success early. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, as you are scheduling your football schedule, that sort of thing, that's something that you're looking at. Outside of the guarantee opportunity. You want an opportunity for your team to be successful early, and I'm sure that's what Coach Banks was thinking about when he scheduled Alabama State. A middle of the road, pretty much SWAC team on the road that historically Southern has beaten, if I'm not mistaken. And there was no reason why he didn't feel comfortable opening up at Alabama State, simply because, it felt that that was a winnable game for Southern, that sort of thing. If I'm Jackson State, I am more disappointed in last week's performance than anything else, simply because I came off of a great win, on a national scene, that sort of thing, being in the MEAC SWAC Challenge. So either way, Carlos, I have to look at my coaching staffs to find out exactly what the mindset was over the course of the past week or so, that allowed both of our schools to come out, I ain't gonna say relatively flat, but not performing up to the standard that was expected for those particular games. But like I said, I would be more disappointed if I was on the Jackson State side going down to FAMU after a big win against South Carolina State and Atlanta. I'm feeling like if I'm them, I'm operating on all cylinders. And, so I'm ready to walk down to FAMU or walk into Miami or what have you, spitting bullets and, let's go get win number 2, let's get at it, that sort of thing. So, I got to find out, what the mindset was, both coaching staff wise, in terms of how they approach the particular game. Bottom line for me, Carlos, for this week, my mantra would be get rid of the chatter. Get rid of the chatter, get rid of the noise. Because if you're listening to the fans, if you're delving full time in social media, that sort of thing, it may take you to a place that you don't really want to go. that may create some doubts in your mind that should not necessarily be there. And you know, if I'm the coaching staff, my sole focus this week, for this particular week, would be to get rid of the noise. You know, we need to know who we are. We need to find out who we are. You know, we need to be spitting bullets, and we need to go out here and show the world what we're capable of doing. Dooley's honeymoon is over. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, I mean, his honeymoon was probably over the day he stepped into Baton Rouge. You know, that's just the type of job that is. You know, TC Taylor's honeymoon is rapidly approaching its ending. You know, because we all know, you know, Jackson State folks are as, how you want to put it, we ain't gonna stay on that wagon for a long time, you know, and just accept losing, especially if you have a good week one week and then you come out and get trounced the next week. And so, you know, but for TC, because this is his first time being a head coach, that sort of thing, I don't say he gets a pass, but he gets a little bit more slack as opposed to Coach Dooley, who's been a head coach before, who is an offensive guru for all intents and purposes. And so the last place that folk would expect for him to be not operating on all cylinders would be the offensive side of the ball. So, you know, it behooves them to find out what's going on with their particular teams. And as you stated, Carlos, it's not a conference game tonight, but this is as big a game as you're going to find for both of these schools, because they're on a mission to find out who they are.
Right. And you know, even though, Carlos, the first two games are considered conference games, you still want to win the games, because this is like preseason basketball. You want to establish your program, or you establish your rotations doing these contests. And then the other thing that you look at, these are two revenue games. I mean, Alabama State draws, Jackson State draws. So even though they're not a conference game, you still want teams like that on your schedule, because you're going to reap the benefits at the gate. So they do count towards the morale of your team. They count towards your fan base. Your fan base wants you to win every game that you play. See, they're not looking at it, well, it's not a conference game. No, that's not how they're looking at that. The fans are saying, this is a game, it's on our schedule. This is a light school. In other words, their budgets are comparable to ours, so we should be in the game. We should be on top. We should be winning. And I know the Jaguar Nation is hurt after coming into Montgomery and coming out on the short end of the stick, just like the Jackson State fans are. You know, they're disappointed how they played down in the game against FAMU. So both teams are coming off a disappointment. Both teams are going to try their best tonight to win that game. They want to reinvigorate their fan bases, and the way to do that is win. You do that by winning, and they got a tough place to go into now. I said that I felt like Southern would come out on top tonight strictly because they're playing at home. I picked the Jags last week to beat Bama State. I thought they could go to Montgomery and win that game, but I messed up by picking Jackson State to win against FAMU in that classic. So this is just a topsy-turvy beginning of the season. It's a long season. All these teams still have an opportunity to reach their goal. The only difference is Jackson State is going to need help because they lost that game against FAM.
Yeah, the margin of error now is just a bit like this. So it sounds like I'm hearing from you guys. This is a see who we are type of game. What type of team are we? Do we want to get to winning habits? For JSU, they have one win under their belt. Southern University, no wins, but they could change that tonight against Jackson State University in a huge matchup. Now, Wheeler, I know you would love to be in Baton Rouge right now for this game, because when you were the director of athletics at Jackson State, and Jackson State and Alcorn State, Southern and Grambling, that's a big rivalry as well. But this Southern Jackson State rivalry, it's just a little bit different.
Yeah, it's on a different level, Carlos. There's no doubt about that. And while we would like to say that it is a friendly rivalry, I don't know that it's all that friendly at the end of the day. But it's one of those that it is what it is. You're excited for the kids. You're excited for the fan base. You revel in the fact that all these beautiful Black folk are getting together. To celebrate pretty much the same thing. And, I haven't seen or heard of any friction between the two groups in terms of fighting and things of that nature. So, it's always been a relatively peaceful type of situation in terms of, the environment overall. I mean, there's a lot of friendly ribbing and, a lot of trash talking, things of that nature that you're going to have, but, nothing to the point where it becomes disruptive or becomes rowdy or anything like that. And it's a good rivalry for college football, period. And it's an example for, a lot of schools to want to emulate. It doesn't get much better, to be honest with you. And so it's something that I've always enjoyed being a part of.
And it's interesting, guys, because originally, you remember, this game was supposed to be played in Birmingham because Jackson State rolled off of Southern's schedule and vice versa. But I think now this year and next year, the local businesses, they will be able to reap the benefits of this home and home series. And then after, I guess, 2025, Southern Jackson State will be back on the schedule as conference games. So you have to take a look at all of that. The business communities are very, very happy with this, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a wonderful rivalry. I've been to a Southern Jackson State game myself when the Braves were off, when the game was in Jackson, and there was 50,000 people in the stadium 3 hours before kickoff. I mean, just the passion, the intensity, and I would like to see more of these games too, Carlos. And it's probably not going to happen though. Southern Jackson's an exception. When the games roll off each other's schedule, if they're in close proximity, do they still play? The commissioner encourages them to play because it, like you said, it's great economically for the two schools in the two cities. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. But I would love to see Jackson and Southern play every year when the games don't count. And I just think it's great for the SWAC. It's great for the communities.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and eventually there was some conversation of, like some conferences are going to not divisional, not divisions where everybody play each other. And you kind of hear conversation about that, wondering if that would happen in the SWAC. And do you just, if you don't have divisions, you just take the two best teams for your championship. But maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves there, but you kind of hear those conversations. But good for business. All the rivalries. When you look at the Magic City Classic, I haven't had a chance to attend that one, but those are one. The Bayou Classic, the Florida Classics. They're good, especially if you can take advantage of those financial opportunities and reinvest them back into the respective programs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen these classics, guys. I mean, Valley played in a classic this past week in Chicago, and I know there was some stuff written about, what happened there. And I can say, just being, we've been in that game a couple of times, and I don't know exactly what happened. It's been reported, but from an AD's perspective and from Coach Wade's perspective, his first game as head coach at Valley, he wanted to make sure everything was right. And I know logistics can get crazy and sideways sometimes, and he said it wasn't a great experience. He kind of dove into it a little bit, but these classics, the Gateway Classic in St. Louis, my hometown, kind of went away. Hope it'll come back. Chicago Classic, Classic in New York, Classic in Florida. I just hope these classics continue, even though it seems like in some way they're kind of dying on the vine. You know, most schools want to play at home and get a home gate and all that. I just hope some of these classes continue as in these other markets to kind of promote HBCUs in those markets. But, you know, I might be in the minority on this. I hope it continues, but some of them are kind of fading a little bit.
Well, Charles, from a administrative point of view, I mean, we as ADs got to make sure I's and T's are dotted and crossed.
Amen.
You know, we have to make sure that these promoters, quote unquote, are on the up and up, that they can actually afford to put on these games, that they're not waiting for the end result in terms of the cash flow before they're able to, you know, pay their bills, things of that nature. And so I can get where what Coach Wade was coming from, because there are a lot of, I'm not going to call them shady. I don't know what word would be sufficient for that. But there are a lot of folk out there that want to try to run these classics that really don't have an idea in terms of the logistics behind moving 85 and 90 football players. You know, and if you're not prepared to put these kids in a full service hotel, if you're not prepared for them to have their meals at the hotel as opposed to busing them to Golden Corral or to a particular restaurant or, you know, something of that effect, you know, if you're not mindful of the needs of the particular coaches as it pertains to, you know, them wanting their teams, quote unquote, isolated and, you know, wanting the things necessary for them to be able to just focus on the game itself, you know, then it can easily get out of hand very quickly. You know, when I read Coach's comments about biscuits for breakfast and McDonald's burritos and all that sort of thing and stuff, I mean, that naturally put a burr up my behind. You know, that's not something that, you know, you want your kids to be a part in. You know, so you have to be mindful, like I said, as an athletic administrator, you know, that the I's and T's are dotted and crossed, that these people are able to fulfill in terms of the things that they need to fulfill. And, you know, quite frankly, guys, you know, I've always been the mindset of that, you know, I need to get at least 15% at the time of the signing of the contract, at least 15% at that time. You know, at least another 15%, 30 days out, you know, and the remainder at least 30 days after, you know, and if the promoter can agree to those particular terms right there, number one, I'm assured that whatever happens, I'm going to walk away with something. And then number two, if I get into a situation where I'm now eating burritos for breakfast, then, you know, I got a little cash flow flowing there to where I can bring in some real food if necessary, or I can make sure these kids get some real food and not have to worry about, you know, trying to break the bank or get a check cut or, you know, something to that effect. So there are a lot of things that go along with that. And, you know, like I said, we as administrators got to make sure I's and T's are dotted and crossed and that we do our homework in terms of some of these guys.
Now, Coach Pettaway, from a coaching perspective, you know, all those Mississippi Valley State had those things that happened. They lost 21-24 to Central State, and Coach Wade didn't put the blame on what happened off the field for their loss. But come on, Coach Pettaway, from a coaching standpoint, well, that doesn't sit well with from a coaching standpoint of some of those things you have to go through.
Yeah, that's correct. Anytime we ever played in a venue or we played in a classic or a tournament where they provided our meals and stuff, always had a backup plan. Always had a backup plan, because if I got there and I didn't, that was not what we wanted to do, that was not part of our routine, then I would change it and I would have money. I've always taken, even though they said if they'll pay the expenses, my team is my responsibility. And I want to make sure I want to make sure that our routine is the same for my players. And so I would take it upon myself and make sure that I have a backup plan. Now that's just me. Everybody doesn't do that, but I've always done that because you can get in a situation that, as a coach, you're not going to use the circumstances around you as a reason for your downfall, but that plays a lot into how the mindset of your team. In other words, your players' mind are not on the game because, man, these kids are hungry. They don't like what they just had, what was just served. So I, as a coach, have always felt that I needed to make sure that I had the pulse of my team in my best interest, because those were the guys that were going to go out there and perform for me, and I wanted them to give them everything they needed so they could not make excuses. And I just think that just comes with it. Coach Wade, I don't know all the particulars about what happened, but I know this: nobody's going to feed my kids biscuits for breakfast. We don't do that on game day. We're going to have a full meal, and it's going to be at the time that's on my itinerary. And so that's my responsibility as the head coach to make sure that our itineraries are followed to the T. And then, sometimes at a restaurant, I understand if the restaurant made a mistake and they're not ready prepared for us, but we're going to be prepared. I'm going to be prepared to pay for whatever I need to pay for to make sure that my kids follow their normal game day routine.
And I'm gonna say this, Carlos. I'm gonna say this. Not to interject real quick, but I'm not gonna allow my coach to use a breakfast burrito as an excuse to lose to a Division II football squad. We're not even going to approach that particular subject from that point of view. Now, from a nutritional point of view and things of that nature, yeah. But the day that I hear a coach say that we lost that game because we had biscuits for breakfast or we had burrito for breakfast, and I know Valley doesn't have a full complement of 63 scholarships, but they got at least 49 or 50, compared to Central State's 36 or whatever the Division II maximum is. No, I'm not going to allow my coach to even approach the subject from that point of view. We're not going there at all.
Well, but you know what? In his defense, now I don't think he didn't use that as an excuse.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
Right. They just lost the game.
I would not allow that to take place.
Right. But I'm just thinking about I know kids. I'm thinking about the mindset of the kids. If they're used to a certain thing and then it doesn't happen, that's a messed up day. Now I don't care. You can be the great Bear Bryant or go down there and be Nick Saban. If the kids are not mentally where they need to be, you have lost that game. You have lost those kids.
I was going to say, guys, that in being around our coaches and coaches in general and players, football players and coaches are creatures of habit. Right. They're used to eating a certain thing for Friday meal. They're used to eating a certain pregame meal at a certain time. They're used to leaving at a certain time. So they're creatures of habit. And when that stuff gets thrown out of kilter, they're not using it as an excuse. It does upset the apple cart a little bit to where as a coach you have to adjust. Now, like in life, you have to adjust. But these are the things that do happen. I mean, according to the report, the plane was late leaving. I don't know if they left out of Jackson or Memphis. I don't know. That does happen. With a charter flight, sometimes if they're coming from another location, if weather, I mean, you can't control that part of it. But, coaches are creatures of habit and they expect things to be a certain way. You're going to the hotel, you're eating all your meals there. You expect meals to be ready on time. Not using it as an excuse, but coaches want that to happen. And that's why the logistics to me are so critical. I really, because I'm around the coaches and I'm helping logistics a little bit. So I can understand how I can upset you emotionally, mentally. That's Wade's first game. So he wants to get off to a good start. So I understand the whole thing behind that. And it can be a little troublesome. It could be upsetting and frustrating.
Right. And then, when you look at last week, now you think about it. Look what happened to Norfolk State. They lost to a Division II school.
Oh,
so see,
boy.
and
the
they
way
weren't the
they
only one.
lost.
You had somebody else in the MEAC that lost to a Division II school. So
Delaware State did. Yeah,
Delaware State. So see,
and
losing the game, but if I lose the game, let me lose it my way. Let me lose the game because we prepared for the game. We had a great game plan. All of our things that we had on that itinerary, we followed them to the T, and then we lose the game. Now, I do have to blame myself. But your kids, the mental makeup of your players going into a contest is very important. I don't want anything. I'm not going to do anything to get them off kilter mentally. I don't want outside people or outside noise or outside influences to do the same thing. And in this case, the food, that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable for a football player. That's not acceptable for a basketball. That's not acceptable for an athlete, period. So that you have to take that into account. And I'm proud of Coach Wade for not even using that as an excuse because he had one, but he didn't use that. And that's good. And that's a good sign for him that and I wish him the best because they don't have at Valley, they may not have as much as Central State now, if you really want to be truthful about it now. I've been up to Central State. I've known some of I know some of the coaches who have coached there basketball and football. So that losing to them, Valley losing to them, on the outside it looks bad, but when you look at both programs, Central State might be a step ahead of them.
And boy, you mentioned Norfolk State and what was it, Virginia State?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you see the footage how they lost? Oh my goodness. We don't have enough time to break into that one. And I got to be careful because I'll get accused of by maybe somebody on this panel and then outside the panel that I'm poking at the Norfolk State head football coach. So I'm not. I'm gonna move away from that. But guys, last week, because we got about 12, 13 minutes. Last week, September the 2nd, of course, Central Valley State over Mississippi Valley State, 24-21. Alabama A&M played up, Coach Pettaway.
I was there.
47-13.
I was proud of our guys. We scored first. We had first down inside the 10, and they held us to a field goal. I knew then. I said, we should have come. You got to score touchdowns. You don't need field goals. And so I'm proud of our kids because even in the fourth quarter, they scored points. They did not give up, and I think that's a good sign. That's a good sign. I was proud of.
Yeah, and that's all you can ask for because it is what it is. Playing up 47-13. Bethune-Cookman played up. They lost 14-56 to Memphis. Of course, Sunday in the Orange Blossom Classic, it was FAMU over Jackson State, 28-10. I think I picked Jackson State in that game. Wheeler, I think you picked Jackson State.
I did pick Jackson State, and that was based off of the crow that I ate coming out of Atlanta the week before.
Right. Oh yeah, that's right. This is our first time being together since I was the only one that predicted that Jackson State would beat them. Oh, that is right.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
So I was full of crow and wanted some redemption.
You're not eating by yourself.
But,
you're not eating by yourself. And I think, Charles, you took FAMU, didn't it?
I did take Florida A&M. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Boy, look, he's proud of that one.
Yeah, I'm proud of that one, but ticked off at the other one you're going to talk about.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to it. Got a chance to see a little bit of Hampton and Grambling State University. Crowley
didn't see that.
Performed well, but when I said earlier, some teams still look like a carryover from the end of last season. Grambling State a little bit better offensively, but defensively giving up 35 points. They drop a decision to Hampton 35-31. Of course, Alcorn playing up at Southern Miss, lost 40-14. Boy, I'm just still shocked at no passing You know, and Charles, when you told me that, it made me think about the discussions we had in the summer. Dual threat. Is it A, dual threat, B, a athlete playing quarterback, or C, a quarterback that can do both? Right now, it looks like it's an athlete playing quarterback, but that's just one game. That's just one game. And then, of course, the wild one of the week last week, Prairie View A&M overcomes a 17-point deficit, and they defeat Texas Southern. And I'm just going to say this. Once again, my question with TSU was defense. Enough pieces around body. We know body, but do we know anybody else? Defensively, can they get better? They got a new defensive coordinator, Prairie View A&M. Offensive, able to come back, overcome adversity. A lot of the teams are similar to where they looked at the end of last season. Hopefully, they'll separate themselves in week 2. Quickly, any comments about last week's games?
Right. Yep. I was disappointed in the Grambling game. And I also going into the season, I picked Texas Southern as my dark horse. And so I thought with them hosting their rival game that they would come out on top. So I was a little disappointed in that. But my hat's off to Prairie View. I mean, those kids are fighting. We picked, I mean, not we, but they picked them 5th in the West. So they're trying to show everybody, oh, we're not the 5th worst team in this league. We're better than that. So that it's still early in the season for everybody, and everybody still has an opportunity to reach their goals. So I'm looking forward to the competition, man. I'm just looking forward to these teams competing, and may the best man win.
And I guess for me, Carlos, at some point in time, I think we all need to revisit the quote-unquote star coaches philosophy and kind of see, has that really panned out in a way that most people envisioned it? You know, like we got Prime, who's come and gone now, but, you know, you still got Hugh Jackson, you still got Eddie George up there at Tennessee State. You know, still got a few of these other guys that were pretty much hired because of their quote-unquote star quality. How is that working out? You know, ultimately, how is that working out? And, you know, I think at some point in time, it's worth revisiting that whole issue, so to speak, to kind of get everybody's views in terms of how that is progressing.
Well, I made my opinions clear on that. You know, from a Southern standpoint, it could be Aeneas Williams, it could be Mel Blount, but is it the right fit? You know, and I'll just say this: with Coach Dooley, there is a faction that wanted the star coach, and whenever a game happens like last week, I'm gonna be honest, you hear that faction, and they get louder and louder. So I think it's what you're saying, Will. Yeah, I think we'll have to revisit it, and then we'll look and see what the data says. Oh, thanks a lot, Smith. Colorado kicking ass right now. Oh, great. But you know, one of the things, Charles, Edmond, I will say this: Coach Sanders has come and gone now, but it seems like the whole, I'm looking for a good word, the whole mental makeup now is because of the success he had. It's like now everyone has to win quickly and win now. But there were programs that were winning before Coach Sanders, and there'll be programs that will win consistently afterwards.
Yeah.
And so I think now everyone fell in love, not everyone, but a good bit fell in love with that. And I think sometimes it's unrealistic. But just my opinion, to what Willa said, I am not a proponent of the star coaching hire.
And
I'm just not. That's just me.
I think Carlos, there are always some programs where there's a win now type mentality.
Yeah, but
like Southern, like
it's
Jackson
rocket
State,
fuel now, though.
like North Carolina A&T. I mean, the list just goes on and on, where they expect you to come in and win right now. And then there are other programs where, folk are more patient with you. They're going to let you go through the growing pains, the growing process. They're going to support you incrementally along the way, to get you the things that you need in order to be successful. And 3-4 years time, they're going to look back on what you've done and haven't done, and kind of grade you in totality in terms of the entire picture. So I don't think that the hiring of Prime, quote unquote, changed that mantra one way or the other. Certain programs are right now, got to get it done right now programs, and those programs are always going to be those kinds of programs. Dooley walked into, what he should have expected to walk into. He's been at Southern before. He knows the culture. He knew that the honeymoon was going to be slim to none, that sort of thing. So nothing should surprise him in terms of any kind of negative attitudes or what have you that may be kind of thrown his way at this time. His thing is he just got to find out, who we are, where we are, and how we're going to get to where we need to be as quickly as possible. He knows the drill. I mean, a couple other coaches out there were Hugh Jackson. He wouldn't know the drill because he's never coached on this level before. But consequently, he knows Grambling is Grambling. He knows that's one of the holy meccas of black college football. And so, it would behoove him to think that coming in the door, I need to start winning right away. So, I mean, how short is his honeymoon, if at all? Eddie George took over a storied program at Tennessee State. Granted, they hadn't been doing a whole lot of winning over the course of a few years, but historically, that's a program that's used to winning, and there was no reason not to expect that somebody of his quote unquote star quality would come in and turn these things around right now. So, I mean, we can debate whether or not it's realistic for some people to expect these things right away. I mean, from an administrative point of view, you got to have that game plan in place. You got to be mindful of the fact that it's going to take a few years to get it done. You got to be able to walk people through these things, that sort of thing. But that's not going to do anything to temper the fan base in terms of what they expect and what they want and what they want to see right now.
To me, Carlos, real quick, I think, money ties into this in this league. You have coaches making really, really good salaries, 300,000 plus. I think 4 of them, maybe 5. And I think that ratchets it up to expectations. Southern, FAMU, Jackson, Grambling, 300 plus, close to 4 in some cases. That ratchets it up to expectations. There's very little honeymoon. Now you look at the second tier level coaches that aren't making that. There's a little bit more patience. There's a little more patience at Pine Bluff. There's more patience at Valley. I think for Alcorn, there's a little bit of patience, but not really considering what we've done the last 6 years in that regard. But I think money drives the patience, the patience tree. The higher the salary, the less the patience. Brian Kelly in your town making $12 million a year. Do you think there's patience there? No, there's absolutely not, especially after what happened last week. So I think, in my opinion, I think money drives patience when it comes to coaches. The higher paid coaches have less patience. Fan bases have less patience.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, we're just about out of time. It's interesting. Some of the FCS brethren, their coaches are not paid as near much as they paid in the SWAC, but they've had much more success. Got to end it on this. Today's schedule quickly: Texas Southern at Toledo, Savannah State at Bethune-Cookman, Miles at Alabama State, Alcorn at Stephen F. Austin, UAPB at Tennessee State, FAMU at South Florida, Jackson State, the game of the week at Southern University, Abilene Christian at Prairie View A&M, Alabama A&M hosting Lane, and Grambling State at LSU. Want to thank Coach Pettaway, Wheeler Brown, Charles, of course, everyone. Keep the conversation going. Until next Saturday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time for another edition of the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. Charles, I'm pulling for Alcorn in a tough non-conference game with Stephen F. Austin. If not 0-2, and pressure will be on McNair.
I absolutely agree. And my prediction, I know the Jags are hungry. I got Jackson State winning this. We'll talk about it next week.
I knew that. I knew that.
We'll talk about it next week.
I got Southern University winning 31-21. I had 6 keys to victory. Don't have time to mention them, but go Jags. Right. Peace and God bless.